Good evening and welcome to the regularly scheduled Marquette Township Board meeting, Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. If you'll stand and join us for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Gosh. Randy, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Truscott.
Here.
Trustee Pompo.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk retires here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our attorney Roger Zappa, and Steve Pelto from Planning is here.
Okay. Thanks, Randy. Consent agenda is next. I'm battling a headache. I'm sorry, so if I kind of lose my train, I did take some Advil. The consent agenda consists of tonight the approval of the prior meeting minutes of February 2nd, previous minutes of January 26th, and the closed session minutes of January 26th. Received committee and other reports, the water production report from January of 16, Planning Commission minutes of January 13th, Recreation Committee agenda for February 16th, and the Marquette Solid Waste Management Authority agenda for February 17th, and draft minutes of January 20th. Bills payable in the amount of $297,702.52. And if anybody'd like to pull anything out, otherwise, a motion.
Motion to accept the consent.
Support.
And lots of support. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Approval of the rest of the agenda. Anybody? Randy?
I would like to delete from the agenda the resolution for the Royals hockey team. We almost have that finished, but I will put that on the next agenda and coordinate with Dave Wiegand to get someone here for that.
Okay, move that to the next agenda.
With that said, I will make a motion to approve the regular agenda as amended.
Support.
Motion and support. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion passes. The agenda is approved. Public comment. If anybody'd like to address the board, come to the podium. Name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is Tom Bronken. I'm a resident of Marquette Township. I live at 235 Forest Hills Drive. I'd like to address the public white library issue. There was a recent meeting, and I forget who said it, but one of the board members suggested that we take any suggestions we had for a contract to the Peter White Library Board of Trustees. So I did that tonight, as a matter of fact, and I'm going to express to you what I expressed to them as well. Over the past few weeks, I've also reviewed all the YouTube videos of past meetings, which is just a wonderful thing. I want to tell you, that's great. And I went back actually to May of 2014, when we were discussing the millage at the time. And from all those discussions, I tried to pull out the themes that I think are going to be coming up in this negotiation with the library. So these are the themes I discussed with them as well. The first theme was that the terminated contract was unusual. And I would agree that was a bit odd, and that's probably because it was ambiguous. In Michigan, when two governmental agencies or entities have to contract with each other, they need authority. And that authority was not in the contract anywhere. So what I suggested was that, well, and there was hints that there was authority there. The language in the two sections seemed to come out of the legislation from the library portion of the legislation, but it wasn't explicit. So I recommend that when you do this negotiation, that you make sure that the authority that you're doing the contract with be put into the contract as well, so there's no more questions about where that came from. The second theme I've heard is that we pay a bunch of money for library services, but we don't have any say in how the library is run. And I think your term, Supervisor Durant, was taxation without representation. If we felt the library was being run poorly, I think that would be something to pursue. But I have not heard that, and I haven't really even heard a board member say that they're upset with the way the library is being run. So I would say, why would we want to take on the responsibility of managing that library, or perhaps getting saddled with some of its debt by changing the structure of things? I would say, leave that alone. Things are working pretty well right now, and so I would say, let's just leave it the way it is. And the third theme is that we're paying too much for our library services, and actually we're paying more than our fair share. There are options for us to do other levels of funding and different ways of funding, but I don't think we're paying more than our fair share, and I don't think we're paying too much. So the contract that we have right now was started 23 years ago. The funding that's in place has been in place for that period of time. And when it happened in 1993, we had a very good library. 23 years later, we have an exceptionally good library, and that's with the funding that we've had. So I think we shouldn't do anything to put that funding in jeopardy. And already, the library is hurting because of the dark store issues. So I think that we don't want to add to their problems in that regard. Another reason for not changing the 1 mil SEV is I'm sure that if we were to lower that SEV at all, that village, at all, every other township would want to follow. And they would want to follow because they would have a legitimate claim that they weren't being treated fairly. So if that were the case, I think we would see a sort of downward spiral for funding for the library, and that would cost us all. So I guess what I'm recommending to you as you go into this negotiation is try to get something explicit about the authority within the contract, but I wouldn't monkey with how it's managed or how our level or the way that we fund it. And I'm very encouraged to see that you're jumping on this now so we can get it done so we can put it on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brocken, appreciate it. Anybody else wish to address the board? Nope. Okay, board member comment. Anybody has anything you want to share? Aw, come on. Okay, Ernie.
One thing I have to say, speaking as treasurer, today was the last day you could pay taxes without being penalized. It's a little too late. Well, if you happen to have it with you, you can drop it in there and we'll make sure that it's dated today and that. So, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Yes, Randy.
Presidential primaries coming up March 8th, Tuesday. Saturday, before March 8th, we'll have clerk's hours from noon to 2 for anyone to drop their absentee ballot off in the office here or pick up one. Kind of the last-ditch effort to do that. Polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. March 8th. I hope the weather is good that day, but hopefully there's no snowstorm that day. And April 19th is the deadline for anyone wishing to run for local office to get a packet and get the required paperwork and signatures done and get it into my office by close of business on that day, April 19th.
Yes, Pete.
It's coming Saturday, February 27th. There's going to be a 3-on-3 hockey tournament at the Lions Field at the rink over there. It might be ice skates, might be boots. Who knows? We're scheduled. Randy just gave me the thing. It's 40 degrees on Saturday. Friday, 39 with showers. So we might have to get some pumps out there, but it's good. That's why we put it skates or boots. So it will be on this coming Saturday. So the 27th, excuse me, the 27th.
What time, Pete?
It's going to start at 10 o'clock, go to about 3:30, something like that. And so it's going to be interesting. So stop by. The weather's going to be fine, so that you don't have to worry about freezing, not like the dog sled. So, all right, thank you.
I'll add something too.
Sure.
Planning Commission meeting last time, we did talk a little bit about some design standard discussion, and we're still working on that. I did tell them that we are going to work on that, and they did talk about the CIP, and I did explain to the Planning Commission that we were going to probably go out and hire someone to help the Planning Commission with that, so to get it like the one that we liked from Grand Rapids. So because the Planning Commission is going to have a lot on their plate here very soon, and the CIP would take a lot of their time up, so I think we're gonna try to help them with that, so.
Thanks.
I have a question for the clerk. Is there going to be an election in May for the school district?
Yes, there will be, and it's gonna be in regards to the school millage. The school is now putting a proposal to, I believe, extend their bond for a number of years. But that is gonna be in May. It will be the first Tuesday after the first Monday in May. And I don't know that date on hand, but, so we will end up with 4 elections this year. So with that said, we're gonna have to eventually move I think our meeting conflicts with that day, so I will probably, a couple meetings from now, suggest we move it to that next day after. Yeah.
May 9th.
Yeah, it's May 3rd, and we're gonna have to move our meeting probably to May 4th, but that'll be on the agenda probably next meeting, so.
Anybody else have anything? Okay. We don't really have a forum discussion scheduled, but I did want to hand out one thing, because Randy mentioned about the CIP. I did talk to Kirk this week, because he's back in the office now. He's been out for a bit. And I spent a few hours looking for Grand Rapids CIP, and I came across this when I was surfing. And this particular package is only $2,000, which isn't really a whole lot, but I think we could do this in just a spreadsheet. I don't know. So Kirk is gonna we've got on our next agenda to have him finish his presentation. If you remember, we didn't quite get through the whole thing. And I sent this to him, he wanted to look at it. But if you look at the second page, it's just basically a spreadsheet. We can add whatever columns we want. This would kind of mirror he's got those 2 reports that are in our budget all the time. Repair and improvement, and I forget, we discovered that they were actually depreciation schedules. So we could put our own spreadsheet together if we want to put project numbers and stuff, the amount. We can just figure out what we want at a work session, which columns. And then the second, which would be the 3rd page in here, just has a picture, and I don't know if John can get this, it's not a very good reproduction. It just tells you what the project is. It's got a picture, it's a road project, and the specifics. I mean, we could do that. I don't know, it depends probably on what somebody to prepare the CIP would cost. But even then, I think this is something we can do. Just because I found this, I just copied it real quickly for you, so you could get an idea what I was thinking anyway.
Lynn,
Yes.
before we make any decision, Cadillac's supposed to have a real good one, and there's Cadillac's is right there, from July 1st, 2015 to June 30th, 2020. So if you want to look at that, they just want it back.
Yeah, okay.
Don't panic for the size of it. It's a
Yeah.
city. City has a lot more operations than what a township does.
Sure.
Pass
Roads
that
and
down.
Yeah, I like
the
that.
whole shot.
Put my photo, quick. Yeah. So she'll remember where it came from.
Yeah. I got the one on Lowe's. That was good. That was good reading.
Did you have a report on that by next meeting?
Yeah, I'll squeeze it in.
It's easy reading, though.
Yeah, lots of pictures.
A lot of pictures.
The only other thing I was going to mention is I talked to a couple ladies Saturday, I think it was, and actually 2 different ladies today, kind of all about the library and taxes and the tribunal and stuff. And it kind of came up today. I said something I said, look at your tax bill. And she said, I don't get a tax bill. And I looked at her and I said, oh, you got yours in escrow, don't you? And I hadn't even thought about it. So I asked another lady I knew who lived outside of the township, because that woman lives in the township. And I said, do you get a tax bill? And she said, no, I get something from the bank. And I said, you've got, a mortgage and escrow. So I had talked to Randy yesterday about putting some kind of a presentation together, like a PowerPoint thing, and just show the bills, show what a tax bill looks like, which tied in perfectly with what these women were saying today, that they don't see. All of those, I think on mine, there's like 10 items listed. And we've listed them off, AMCAB and 911 and the Heritage Trail, and on my bill, there's 4 school taxes, 4 different ones. So it's pretty substantial. So I'd ask Randy maybe one of the next couple meetings to have some kind of a thing put up so that the public can see that. And just a light explanation, he said Dulcie had done that a few years ago. I remember her coming in and kind of explain the tax bill, how it's calculated and where that money comes from and where it goes. Our little 4.9 is down at the bottom. So I just wanted to kind of throw that at you.
You talk about escrow, looking at what comes in for people paying taxes. When we get the information in from the banks, the financial institutions, it's not 1 or 2. Sometimes we get 2 and 3 and 400 of them at a time. And these people, they get out of their escrow, they never see the tax bills or anything else in that. And we just go back and pull their tax statement and stamp it paid, and that's it. And they're not worrying about it.
I know it's covered.
They know it's covered. So there's 2, 3, 400 at least. People never get tax bills, minimum in that.
I have no idea what they're being charged for.
No, it's all in escrow, and as long as it's paid, they don't care in that.
Well, pardon me, but I think they do care if they knew it wasn't free. And I think that's important, and I think your point's well taken, and we should work towards that to pass that out to people, at least at the desk. Things are not free. There isn't any of that that's free, whether it's all the school districts or the county, and there's going to be more on the ballot next fall. So, and none of it's free.
So anybody wants, they just need to go to whatever their municipality is. They can come in here and get a copy of it, even though their escrow
Yes.
is handled outside of it. This would be the better place to come rather than going to their bank.
Anyone that lives in the township that has escrow, they can come in and get a copy of the tax bill. It shows exactly what the taxes are. So that's not a problem.
Good. I also got an email right before 5 today that one of our employees was getting kudos from some people in town. And a lot of times we don't mention employees' names. I don't know if that's appropriate now. But
Oh, it's just somebody recognizing their efforts,
Yeah, that they had
in
done such a
maintaining
good
the
job.
building. Building and Grounds Department. And we put a copy of that in their file.
Good. The woman apparently is very particular about cleanliness, and she was just very appreciative that one of our employees had done such a nice job. So I thought that was pretty good.
Always good to hear.
Yeah, they work hard. So that's kind of our forum discussion. I didn't have anything else to add. If there's something anybody wants to throw at us or talk about in the future, just feel free to use that time. It's a little different than board comment. Typically, as I've mentioned before, the board comment kind of follows public comment if we want to address something people at the podium have said. That's kind of how it's set up, although we've used it for other stuff. So if there's something you want to bring up at that time, just let me know. So we can go on to unfinished business. A is medical marijuana moratorium continued. So I'll pass that on to Randy or Roger. Whoever wants to.
For the last several years, the board has been monitoring and watching closely what's been happening with the medical marijuana issue. It's a hotly contested issue. As you'll recall, it was on the ballot as a referendum. It passed in the state of Michigan. That immediately created a potential issue of distribution centers and a variety of issues that we were faced with early on. The single issue that has not as yet been addressed by anyone, and there are still several bills and several cases pending before the courts in the legislature, is the fact that marijuana, medical or otherwise, is still a violation of federal law. Whether the state approves it or not, it's still a federal offense. So on that basis, this township board has taken a position since the beginning that we've put a moratorium on allowing any kind of distribution or any kind of licensing for that other than direct medical providers, doctor-patient type relationships, but no, what's the term?
Provisioning
Dispensaries, provisioning centers, as I now refer to, are distribution centers, dispensing centers. So this moratorium basically is being recommended to continue until some of these questions are answered legislatively and through the courts.
Yes, Roger.
You'll notice in the proposed resolution, the 5th paragraph down, that many of the bills, well, none of the bills that are listed are the same bills that were in your last moratorium that you addressed. There have been countless bills introduced in the legislature, both the House and the Senate, and while there's some strong resemblances, the bill numbers have changed and so forth. And one of the key ones that's pending, just from Marquette Township's standpoint, is there are bills that would potentially allow any municipality to regulate or even possibly prohibit provisioning centers, which is essentially the place where a patient gets his or her medical marijuana from. And until those regulations are adopted by the state legislature and signed by the governor, it would be premature for the township to be enacting any type of an amendment to the zoning ordinance or any other type of ordinance to just address whether to allow such a facility, or if so, under what criteria, because the legislature has failed to enact any guidance at this point. There are also a number of bills addressing even the definition of medical use of marijuana pending right now. There are bills pending relating to the what can a landlord regulate in terms of its tenants within a municipality. So all of these things, while they're pending, makes no sense for us to be taking action. I know the moratorium has been going on for a seemingly long time, but until we get some legislative action, we would be essentially shooting in the dark on what it is we're trying to regulate. So
And this one is for how long?
through July 31st of 2016. It's a
So just
relatively short one.
months
Hopefully
at a
there'll be
time.
some type of action taken by then.
Okay, so do we have a motion, or,
Move to support the resolution.
I'll second that.
okay, any statements, questions, Ernie?
You want to extend it for a period?
It's, this
Through
one's
July.
going till July
July
31st.
2016.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Randy?
No, just its continuation, as Roger said, as of our existing one with some updates, and we won't move on anything until the legislator enacts some of these on some of the bills that are pending, because it just doesn't make sense to do it before that.
Okay, motion and a second. This will be a roll call.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Pompo,
Yes.
Trustee March,
Yes,
Trustee Truscott,
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Unfinished business 9B, discussion of disposition of former township facilities. Consider listing agreement. And Mr. Pelto is here. And he's coming to the podium.
Good evening. Steve Pelto, Look Realty. I'm here tonight to answer any questions, also to give you the good news that Bonanza is officially closed as of today, and there will be an urgent care there in the very near future, and we handled it for them. So, is there any questions that you have? I talked to Roger Zappa the other day, and as of the other day, I don't believe there was any offers or proposals on the table. I know you had given Randy up to a week plus an extension, but to my knowledge, I had not heard anything else to the contrary.
Want to answer that, Randy, or Roger? You've been working on this the most.
From the standpoint of the board direction, we did get in touch with the individuals who had expressed interest, and they have been looking at the property. In fact, we had a second round of visits this afternoon. We have no money on the table, no firm commitments from any of the four. There's four additionals to the original one that we were talking to that have expressed interest. They have looked, sought information regarding utilities, what our utility history was over there, what the taxable impact may be. So they're looking at it, but as of today, there is nobody who's come forward with any cash.
So we're looking for some direction. If we, yes, Dan.
Well, since we have none, I think the second thing was to move right into Mr. Pelto's contract. I'm a little disappointed that we don't have Mr. Pelto's contract that he would like to see, so we could decide on that tonight, but,
Well, I asked that, and Roger said he could do it in 10 minutes. I asked if we could meet or talk, and he said whatever we discussed tonight, he could do it in 10 minutes. I did ask that question.
so your basic change, that I understand it, is that you want to basically move forward because nobody's accepting it. You're willing to have 2 weeks with an exemption of 1 month for these people that are here right now that were interested in it before, which we've just gone through and nobody's seemed to want to do it. So as far as I'm concerned, those people are off the table at this point in time. I think it's time that we put it on the market. And I think, Rita, I guess you just want to have a 1-year contract, I'm assuming, and then that's the only change that you want in here? Okay, then I don't have a problem whatsoever in making a motion to direct Attorney Zappa to formally come up with a contract for Mr. Pelto, as long as nothing has changed other than this, as making it a 1-year contract. And also, I'd like to also put into the fact that the sale of the property can be sold as is, all, or broken apart, whatever we can get at this
do
point.
that.
Okay.
So just for clarification, so what we're doing is eliminating anybody also on the contract, right? We're not giving exceptions, or how is that worded so that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, they've had 2 weeks, and obviously
That's exactly what I thought, too.
nobody wants it. So I mean, if they want to, if we put it on the market and they want to come back, well, then that's up to them. But
Right, that's what was said.
Question down here.
We just have the motion here. Go ahead, Roger.
You're going to need to clarify, the 1 year, we've got clarified, I think, but the original contract gave a list in the addendum of about 6 people that said there would be no commission paid if they ever bought it during the listing timeframe. What came back was a provision that those same people would have 30 days, if they had a closing, I believe, within 30 days, that there would be no commission. So you could still have an offer, for example, that came in next week, and if by chance you could get a closing completed and financing done and so forth within 30 days, there would be no commission paid. So you need to just, the contract can say anything the board wants it to say, but for me to put it together in the 10 minutes, which is truly about all it would take to do, I need to know whether there's going to be a provision that says if somebody comes forward with an offer that's already looked at the property, that there's going to be a window of 30 days, 60 days, forever, 2 days, whatever that is, in order to effectuate that, because that's going to affect whether your contract with the Realtor results in payment of a commission or not, and if so, when. So that's my only input, and I don't say anything to sway the board one way or the other as far as what way you might want to have the contract worded, but those are the options, and we don't want to leave here tonight without addressing that, because otherwise it'll be on your next agenda, and it's already been on the agenda a good number of times.
Pete?
I'd have till Friday, and then we're going to extend it a week, and after that week, it's open. We're not going to protect them from there. That's what I understood from them last meeting, because you said Friday, and then we extended a week, and then it was done. And anything after that, whoever wants to come see it, if they looked at it before, they still have to go through Mr. Pelto. That was my understanding of what we said.
Were you going to respond, Randy? You look like I didn't want to interrupt you. No? You're okay. All right, so actually that kind of has two sides to it, Roger, whether or not, what the length of time is, and what do we do with the people who have already made inquiries, because there's nothing in writing, there's no commitment at all. So that's kind of a two-phase, was that correct? You kind of need two answers. What happens to the people as far as Steve receiving a commission, and how long do we have a time frame? In other words, do we write the contract or agree to the contract tonight, you type it up, and whatever happens with all of those people, they need to go through Steve? Or do we have some kind of a moratorium of 60 or 30 days where they can still directly deal with us and not Steve?
We had 2 years.
Is that correct? Yeah, but that's the question. and I
That's
just
the
wanna make
question
sure
for the board to
that we
decide.
understand what it is and what we want to do.
You can, and I mean, you can still list the property tomorrow, if you wish. But the question I need to know the answer to is if somebody that's already looked at it, that's been generated by Marquette Township, makes an offer, what are you going to do with that? What's that contract going to say? Again, I'm not steering the board in any direction, but that needs to be addressed.
Right.
The question would be, if the folks who came through and looked at the building the second time today made an offer tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, they're still going to have to get financing, they're still going to have to go through the process. Do we increase the price by 6% to cover the commission, or do we exempt that sale from the commission? That's the question. And for what period of time would that be valid?
John?
So it remains with the maker of the motion to make the extension if he wants to, and then you need support to go ahead.
Yeah, but we just have the motion so far. We don't have support
So
yet.
the maker of the motion has to decide what portion of the extension, if he wants any.
Correct. Dan?
My feeling is no. They've had, as it's been said, 2 years. I mean, some of these people have had 3 years to decide on this thing. We gave them 1 week with an extension of another week. I'm sorry that they came yesterday to look at this stuff, but at this point in time, we've given them enough time. I want to get this on the road. I want to get these things listed. I want to get this real estate sold as fast as we can. So that is why I would say I want to remove all those provisions for the 6 or so people that are in here and just go to a straight contract of sale of the property, with the idea that it can be sold piecemealed or as a whole. Whatever somebody wants to offer us, we'll look at.
So your motion is just, I just want to make sure, to list it with Look Realty for 1 year, and that's it. So if he sells it to the first or second or fourth person, they're dealing with him, correct?
Correct.
Okay. For the price that we had already put in the contract?
I would hope for, I'm sure we can make counter offers if they come in with an offer. And I want to exclude all of the, obviously then any sale would be, the commission would go to Look Realty for any sale of the property.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second?
I'll second that.
Any comments, suggestions, thoughts?
Well, like I said, it's over 2 years, and, you know, why would they wait till the last minute? You know, they want to deal with Mr. Pelto, and if they want, whatever he decides to do, a percent, that's up to him, but I like the 1 year and go from there.
I'm assuming any proposals would come back to the board.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Questions for Steve or Roger?
Does Roger understand where we're going right now?
I'm clear.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We
Thank
have
you.
a contract.
Thank you, Board. I'll meet with Mr. Zappa tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
You'll have it sold by next week?
Thursday?
You should ask him if he's got someone on his desk already.
I don't.
Okay, 9C is appoint Library Township's Contract Subcommittee. As you know, in the last couple meetings, we've talked about the library contract, what that's gonna look like. I did have a conversation today with the director, I guess he'd be the president, pardon me, the board president of the library, and he's ready to get on board with whatever he'd like us to have, at least the first meeting at the library. And he wants me to let him know when we pick our people. He's pretty much got 3 people plus his interim director that are willing to meet with us, and they will work around our schedule. So, John?
With the intent of indicating our township willingness to find resolution with regard to the library service contract, the dilemma, I move the following. I move that the Charter Township of Marquette appoint our township supervisor, our township clerk, and our township treasurer to meet with 3 members of the Peter White Public Library Board to conduct preliminary review of possible acceptable library service contract conditions. Such action will accelerate full township and Peter White Public Library Board review.
Support.
Motion and support. Any comments, John?
I just think we need to move off the dime, and we need to give people a chance to communicate with the library, and they can communicate with our members, and we can all kind of await some outcome from that meeting. And I'm sure there'll be more than one meeting, but that's all right. We can get around to discussing what's being offered by both sides.
Okay. Dan, any comments?
No, I'd just like to see it moving.
Okay. Anything?
I appreciate being on the committee, and I think I'll do my best to be there, but most of you know I have a medical problem with my wife and that, so I'm never quite sure. So I'd like to see opening for an alternate, if possible, in that. And I never know what's going to happen from one day to the next at this point in time. I'd be more than happy to serve the best I can, as often as I can, but I just don't know in that too, so.
Yep, that's reasonable. Randy, anything?
Are
Keith?
we going to have Randy, the library's going to have 3 plus 1. Do we have 3 plus Randy?
No.
Yes, fine with me, yeah, they'll have their director. That makes sense. Do we need that in the motion? Do you feel that's necessary?
I'm sorry, I couldn't quite hear.
He's questioning whether our manager will come, their director's gonna be there with 3 of their board members.
I would think that you'd want to know whether you're meeting with 3 people from the library board. If you're not, if you're meeting with anybody beyond that, that's your choice and the committee's choice to bring your manager along, or whoever you might want.
Do you want that in the motion? Does that make a difference?
No, I don't think
for
it
you?
needs to be. I think that the supervisor can, has the power in the Constitution to be the negotiator. And I think that the 3 of you can do a fine job, and you can call in whoever you need. I wouldn't let it get lopsided, but I wouldn't call them in until they were needed.
Okay. And the alternate, is that okay with you as being the motion maker? To appoint, excuse me, to appoint an alternate, so if one of us can't be there?
Is that,
Well, that's what Ernie asked, just in case he can't.
I have no objection to an alternate. That's your choice.
Any other
I
questions?
still would like to make sure that we have our manager there, since he's the, runs.
No, that's just for one of us, if one of us can't be there, to have an alternate.
If they have 3 and then the director, we should have 3 and the manager.
Sure, right,
That's what it is.
okay. Any other?
You can ask Dan if he's okay
Yeah.
with that alternate.
Dan?
With the alternate? I have no problem.
Yeah, we'll put that in the motion, and the alternate will be picked by the supervisor, though.
Well, assuming anybody could, with schedules the way they are.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Who would have the availability then for flexibility to be an alternate? Dan, since you were the second, would you want to have that fall to you?
Sure.
Okay, as an alternate. Do we need a vote on that? Okay. Then meeting time. Do we want to set something up so I can let them know they'd like to get going as soon as possible?
Can,
So,
question?
yeah, Dan?
Obviously, before we meet, I think the board has to decide the consensus of what they want to offer.
Right.
And I know that we discussed at the last board meeting if anybody had any changes or things they would be interested in giving to the committee to bring it tonight to discuss. I just want to know, are we going to do that or, okay,
Yep, that's what I was hoping.
okay.
Do you want to try to schedule something for next week, guys? What's
Yeah, I'm
your-
free. I'm free most of next week, yeah.
21st, 22nd. If we give them a couple, 3 dates maybe, or times, or a little bit of, try to do something during the day, or like 6
Thing
o'clock?
Afternoon.
You, Ernie, what's the easiest?
Afternoon would be fine, but the first, 22nd, 23rd is doctor appointments and that.
Okay. I've got a couple things on Wednesday. Should we try Thursday, the 25th? Maybe like 2 or 3 o'clock?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Work? Do you want to do Friday as an alternate?
I might be gone on Friday, but Thursday would work for me.
Unless we did, like 4 o'clock on Wednesday as an alternate. So if we'd try Thursday, the 25th, say somewhere like between 2 and 4. And then otherwise, Wednesday, the 24th, like, got an appointment, like maybe 4 o'clock. We'll start with that and see. If that doesn't work, I'll get a hold of you. See what happens, okay? So then, the next thing is to try to figure out what are we gonna bring to them. If we wanna have some talking points, or, Dan, since you had some ideas, you wanna start?
Well, as I stated at the last meeting, and I appreciate Mr. Broxton's comments, I agree with him 100% that the authority needs to be in the contract. The only thing that I'd like to see, although I wouldn't mind seeing some representation, since we are paying the money, but I don't know if that's a feasibility problem or not. I don't think it is, because I think it's under a charter that we can't. I'm not sure on that again, but, and the only other thing I would like to see is I'd like to see the end result of, that the contract goes on forever. I'd like to see a change to every 4 years the millage would be proposed. Just so it's out there, and I think 4 years is enough time. I believe it. I think that's the normal for everybody. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean, I'd just like to see it put in there as a 4-year agreement that gets, the millage would get reintroduced every 4 years.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Thoughts, John?
Well, I've listened to the board through this whole dilemma, and I've made some notes of various ideas. And I think what I would do is read them and pass them out to our committee that's going to meet. And these, I won't identify where these all came from, but I'll just read them. Delete the automatic extension of our contract for an indefinite term. That's one thing on the contract that the committee might want to eliminate. Delete the assignment of 100% of the penal fines to Peter White Public Library. The penal fines allocated to the township under provisions of Public Act 59, 164, 1964, belonging to the township. And 3, revise the Peter White Public Library Charter to allow each participating township to appoint 1 member to the Peter White Public Library Board. And 4, revise the fee for township participating membership to be more representative of each of the township populations. And 5, end the charging of our residents of participating membership township fees from being asked to pay non-resident fees for functions conducted at the Peter White Public Library. Those are a few that could be entertained. I'll give you a copy. Here. Those are just a few that you can use to work off of.
And
Yes, Pete.
in the past, we've had John and Lynn, both of you sat on the advisory board. What went wrong there?
The-
You say we don't have anything to say about it, and I heard you come time and time again, it don't do any good to express your opinion on certain things, and what went wrong? What aren't they listening to?
When,
It's the
Wait a minute.
structure.
John, hang on, yeah, it's the structure.
Sure.
Some of that falls to the city charter, and some of it is the state library charter. That only city municipal residents in that community, if it's a village library or a county library or a city library, only those residents can be on the board, period.
Right, but the advisory board,
That's
you
different,
sat
yeah.
on that, but what happens when you brought something up?
Nothing.
Did it go anywhere?
No.
So,
And the few times I did make suggestions, I don't know that they were brought to the board. That's why I started going to the board meetings. And I came here and said, the Township Advisory Council was set up at the same time in 1990, between 90 and 93, when the contract was being disseminated to all the townships.
Right.
Marquette Township didn't join till 93. Chocolate was first. They're the ones who were approached, and they said, I don't think this is going to work. They didn't like the idea. They kind of, so it went on for a few years. So at the same time, the Township Advisory Council was begun, and 2 members from each participating municipality would go on this board. And when I started going, and John was kind of coming off, the purpose of TAC was not to advise, as far as I knew, unless it was before I got on this board. Nobody came and gave us a library report. We didn't get anything in writing. This board did not go to those people and say, this is what we'd like to see, what's happening, nothing. There was no communication that I knew of. So that's why I asked if I could be on the TAC. So after going to a few of those meetings, and we had discussed here that we thought things could be changed somehow, or could they? I brought that up, and they said, the response I got back was, that's not the function of this committee. And I thought, well, then what are you doing? Because they would typically talk about events and fundraisers, or they didn't get into the budget, the meetings I went to. And that was probably, I don't know, a year's worth maybe, something like that. It was quite a few meetings.
then why are we calling it advisory?
Well, it's not us. This was
No,
already
no, but
set
I'm
up.
just saying, if you're
But
sitting on the
they're not-
advisory for the
yeah.
township and you have no input, I
Right.
know you've come back here more, you said it's just a waste of time, I don't know why I'm going there.
Yeah.
Ernie come back here and he said, I'm not going back again, it's a waste of time.
They just
So
talk about
it
what's going
behooves them
on.
just take a look at that process and say, it wasn't working. Maybe if they would have been listening, we wouldn't be here.
And I did bring it up a couple
right.
times at least.
Well, I hope that's portrayed when you're talking to them. You know, tell them the reasons why some of this stuff happens and.
So that's why I asked this board then if I could just go to the board meetings. And I did that for I don't know, a year maybe or something. And that seemed more productive. I think we had a really good working relationship because they would ask me questions. And that's kind of what I tried to explain a couple meetings ago. We're a governmental body. They're a functioning board. There's a difference of even the types of items on our agenda. They're two totally different. They don't understand how we worked, and we've made those comments that their contract is strange. It's because it is. It's a library contract. Those are totally different from a governmental perspective than what we're used to seeing. Even me in the business world, I've never seen anything that was just open-ended. So when we say that, excuse me, that this is an unusual contract, that's what we're trying to say. It's not a commonplace contract that I'm familiar with, business-wise, or the township is government-wise. It's a whole different animal.
I think John got a question before his
I know,
blood
he's
pressure
probably
gets too
jumping
high.
on his seat.
I don't want to ice him down over there.
Okay, John.
The point is, it's a service contract. That's what you have with the library. You got to keep that in mind, that it's a service contract. So you have every right and every obligation to make sure that what is being passed on as recommended by being put on the ballot to our people, you have to be sure that you're willing to stand behind that and say it's fair and it's reasonable, and I recommend it, that's why I'm putting it on the ballot. Because if it was something that you didn't recommend, you'd never put it on the ballot. And that's the attitude that our residents have when they look at something and it's there. If you put it there, you damn well better say it is something that I recommend. It's not an evil thing. Okay, the library contract that exists is something from the Commission of the City of Marquette, and it's something that they have given the authority to the library board to run. The library board is appointed by the commissioners, so it's that kind of an operation. There is any kind of a contract they could make, I believe. I'm an engineer, not an attorney. But I believe they could change it overnight, and they could make it, they could put somebody from every township that participates on that board, but they'd have to change the contract that they started with. And I can tell you that the roadblock that they have each time they ever think about that is the perpetuity clause that they have in that contract that says they don't have to go back to their electorate for the millage that was imposed when the library was formed. It's the only contract I know of in library, in any library today, that has perpetuity in the taxation. In other words, they don't have to go back for that portion of the tax. And that's something they're never going to want to change that charter for, because they would lose that. There isn't any legislative body that would approve today having perpetuity in a contract. So it's a big struggle for them, but I think that if they ever want to solve the inequities that exist and welcome people into the library in a full, with all the full strength, would be to put a member from every township that participates on their board and let them vote. They'd still have the overnumbering. They'd have more people than anyone else and they could vote. But it's something that they have to get over, that they want to give up that perpetuity that exists, that they protect so vividly. They don't want to go back periodically to their own people in Marquette and ask them to vote on a millage issue. And I think if it's as wonderful as they say it is, and I believe it is very wonderful, they wouldn't have any trouble. But somebody there thinks it is a big problem, and they don't want to go back. And that's what's going on. And that's part of the biggest problem that you've got with the library.
Biggest thing I have, we don't even know how many are card holders in the township.
They're not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you because they communicate with those people at election time, and they don't want you to communicate with those people at election time. It's ridiculous for us to put $200,000 into their kitty and not be able to ask them, who are these members you talk about? Who is this 1,800 number that you have, that you say you have, that are all card holders? If you take those 1,800 and multiply it times the minimum amount of buying power, to buy, whatever it takes to buy a membership, they'd have more money than the $200,000. So that tells you that the 1,800 is a false number.
Ernie?
Talking about the committee that you originally were talking about, I attended one meeting on that, the advisory committee, and I came back and I said at an open meeting that I would never go back again. It was a complete, absolute waste of time. I brought up at the time that the dark stores are coming in and the dollar amounts, everything else, and all I got back was, that's not our problem. It's not our problem. We don't worry about that. We're not going to do anything about it. They didn't even want to address it. All they did was take the packet that they put out and go through it page by page, sheet by sheet, and that was it. And like I said, I wouldn't go back to it again because it was a waste of time. And I asked them what the advisory committee was all about, and I never even got an answer. I don't think they really understood what the advisory committee was all about. They had no idea. And that they were sitting there as representatives from their different townships and that, and they were on a committee, they had their name on a letterhead, and to be honest with you, I've sat on enough committees over my lifetime to know what it's all about on committees and what's involved with it, and that's a waste of time. And that, unless they come up with a new schedule, a new overlook on it, I'd say discontinue it, unless they're doing something different and that. This is a waste of people's time. And I'll be very honest, I've said it before and I'll say it again. And that, I know we have people that said it from the township setting on it. We get no reports back that there's any recommendation that's going upwards to the board, none whatsoever. And that, we have no idea what's going on. We have no idea what's coming from the library board, so. That's my piece.
Does that answer your question, Pete?
Kind of frustrating. I just want to make sure that people get the facts, so, you know, that's what it is. I realize that we can't just change things because it's through the legislators and stuff like that. So, but it just bothers me that the feeling from our board members who go to a meeting and come back with that, I just think they dropped the ball somewhere along the line, you know. So, but.
Well, and part of the question too is what is our fee for service? If we're paying, if the intent is, and I'm saying if, because I don't know how this started, was to provide the federal government allows everybody to go to the library, okay? And the federal government pays the library $600,000 a year or something for the community or the state. I don't remember exactly how it's divided up. But the government does allow that so that everybody can avail themselves. So you can go in and use the computer, you can look through the books, you can do research, whatever they have. If you want to take something out, you need a card, okay? Makes sense. We've all done that. Are we providing cards? Is that what our millage is for? Are we providing that they can go and watch the movie and the dinner thing? Does that allow us to bring our kids in so that they can participate in their activities? We're already paying you know, if any one of our people wants to do something extra, they would have to pay the out-of-city rate. And that's what has been said, that that's what we would be charged. If we didn't have the millage, we would be charged, instead of 75, I believe it's 115 for anybody out of the city. So what does the $211,000 represent that we give them, or that the businesses give them who can't have cards? I mean, it's kind of a, what are we paying for as a township? Our people, not the board, because the people pay for it, but what are they getting for that? That's what I'm not sure of.
You have-
Dan, yeah, wait, Dan had his hand
I'm
up.
sorry, Dan first.
I agree with you that we are paying for our residents to have a library card, but I think also you have to realize that we are paying, when I say the township residents, are making a contribution to keep the library running. It is no different than us donating to the Heritage Iron Ore, the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, or whatever, like the fireworks display in Marquette, we give money to. That comes directly from the township. But in this instance itself, the township residents did vote for the Iron Ore Heritage Trail monies. And I think that every township resident out there, I've heard people say, don't take away my library card. And that's the farthest thing that we're ever going to have to honestly do. But I agree when John says that if everybody had to pay the price for a library card, that it would be more than what I'm paying. And just because I paid my taxes today, last day of the day, I looked at it, and I pay $65 a year for my taxes for the library. I can't get a library card for my wife and myself for $65. I think that I agree 100% with everybody, and I think everybody on this board agrees that the library is a great building, great place to be. But the library, like everything else, is for all the people, not just in Marquette City. And I think that everybody out here is expecting to pay the extra amount of money, or not even extra amount of money, or whatever our millage is. Yes, it's different, but it's to keep the library going. If we didn't, going back and making just a quick discussion on Mr. Marx's things, I mean, deleting the assessment of 100% of the penal fines to the Peter White Public Library, I don't agree with that, because as far as I'm concerned, the township itself has paid $8,000, but if we do that and everybody else jumps on it, then the library now loses $32,000. Can they survive on that? No, it's obvious with the dark store issue. What they can't survive by taking cuts, and by us, I mean, they've had to lay off people. They've had to cut their hours. That's not right. The library is a resource for everybody in the county, or at least in this case in Marquette County. So I do not have a problem whatsoever with giving my fair share to support the library. I don't look at my taxes as just getting a library card. I don't think there's a lot of people out there that look at their taxes as getting a library card. I think they're looking at supporting the library to keep the library running. If we had to close the library, would it be great? No. Would it be advantageous? No. If you had to close that building, think about what you just closed. I think that's the biggest thing. And I guess my argument all along has been, if my house is assessed at $200,000 in Marquette Township, and I pay my $1 it's the same as if I lived in Chocolate and had a $200,000 house and paid my $1 I'm not paying anything different. Our only problem we have here is the fact, and it's not a problem, it's to our benefit, I'm not going to argue that, is we have a high SUV because of our commerce that we have here. And I don't think that, I just don't think that the business district is going to say, you know what, I don't want to pay that millage for that library. I really don't. I think they're just like probably every other citizen here, want to keep that thing running. So to say that we are, to revise the fee for the township purchasing members to be more representative of each township population, I don't think that's fair. If you break it down per person that has to pay their taxes, no matter where you live, a mill is a mill. It doesn't change if I live here, or I live in Chocolate, or I live in Sands, or I live in Scandia. It's the same mill. We pay more, yes. I'm not going to argue the fact that we pay more, but it's only because of our large growth of businesses out here. So I guess that's something I really have a hard time understanding, that point of it. And I'm not going to put a little, move on this thing, but I just want to say that I do believe that people here, when they pay their millage, are supporting the library to keep the library running. Whether it is to get a card, but it's also to keep the library running.
John?
I want to make one big distinction between the millage that you pay for the school district, the millage that you pay for the county, the millage that you pay for the trails. Every damn one of them, every one of them, you get to elect somebody to represent you. And at the library, as long as it's run the way it is, and it really needs to be changed, that isn't the case. You don't get the same elected school board member or county board member or whatever. That's the difference. And that's why it needs to be changed. And it's only been about 8 years that we've been calling it to their attention that they need to change that some way. And it isn't that anybody wants to do any harm to the library. It's want them to grow up, and grow up during this era, because what's happening is more and more of the library activity is becoming a community activity rather than a library activity. And that's okay, but they need to take a look at that, and they need to wake up to the fact that it isn't going to go on forever if you don't get to elect the people that make the decisions. That's my point.
Well, and that's why I asked the question is, what are we paying for? One of the options that I asked the MTA representatives and attorneys down there was, what are our options? Attorney Zappa said there are two different ways of looking at this contract. Well, that's a second way that nobody really knew about, for one thing, so we should probably have more information on that. But one of the suggestions from their panel was, how much can the township afford? Offer it to them. Just a number. 20,000, 100,000, whatever. Just tell them this is what you're gonna give them to support. So that's where my question came in. What are we doing? Are we trying to buy cards for everybody? Because a few years ago, that's what we said. How many card holders do you have? We'll just buy them cards. Now we're talking about support. So it's up to us to decide. I'm not like Roger. I'm not saying this is what we should or shouldn't do. But that's what we have to decide is what is that money now? What do we want it to be? What does the public want it to be? Because we want to do what the public wants, but it's still going to come down to us asking a specific question on a ballot. It's got to be a yes or no. I've asked Randy 100 times, can we word it this way? Can we do this? Can we do A, B, C, D, none of the above? And he said, nope. It's got to be so succinct and so clear and so defined that it's just yes or no. So we have that opportunity to say it's going to be a mill, it'll be a half mil for 2 years, it'll be an $80,000 contribution, whatever. That's what we have to try to come up with so that we can put it on the ballot. Pete?
The reason I voted, I wanted to have a committee sit down with him is because I first started is that we sort of got chastised for just even talking about it. 3 years ago, I think, when we talked about the roads, we thought, well, can we put the same amount? And then, holy cow, we thought we're killing them, But now we're getting the same reaction, and that's all we want to do. And I explained to one person from the library, I said, 23 years. Do you go 23 years without looking at your house insurance, your car insurance? I said, we're supposed to be watching out for the residents and make sure we do the right things. why wouldn't we look at it? All right? Here they got something like that, and that we get millage. Okay, first thing, well, the millage don't count towards your, the 10, but we're not talking about what it counts to. We're getting people that, we try to explain it, for the road millage, we put a millage for that. We got a millage for this. Now, the light and power is coming up, and might be a total of 41% for our residents. Our residents can't pass it on. The businesses can spread it with their costs, among other things. Our residents can't do that. Yes, we got business out here, but with business, we have infrastructure thing we have to take care of, and that's all covered by different things. We have to pay for that. And we talked time and time again about that. And all the remarks that came back from you and Ernie and John and stuff like that, I said, well, we have to look at it. We have to find out what's in it for my own sake, and I'm making the right thing. We look at the chart. I brought it up to, the chart for people on the surveys. They want this, and they got a percent for it. I looked at the library, 7%. And we're getting chastised for 7% because we just want to ask a couple questions and see what we can do, So we put $206,000. Well, maybe, pretty soon if the library thing gets due, maybe they want to mill in a quarter. And that's when I think we should tell our residents, no, we stay at 1% then, but I don't know. That's the way I feel. That's why I've been trying to explain it that way anyway, how I feel and why I think it's a good thing to discuss it.
Dan?
Well, in response, I guess, it's not up to us to decide what the residents can afford. I think it's up to the residents to decide what they can afford. We can only put out there, if we put out if we say 1 mil, like it's always been, and the vote comes in, yes, it's fine, then it's fine. The residents have decided they can pay the 1 mil. If for some reason or another that we run into problems where we can't afford to have our extra police protection time out here because the budget won't let it, and we have to go out for a millage, well, then it's up to the residents to decide whether they want to pay that millage for that police. So they're making the decision where they want to put that money. I would hope they would consider, if that ever happened, and not saying it would, that they would consider that also. Again, it's not up to this board, as far as I'm concerned, to decide what the people can afford. That's the whole reason for a millage vote. That's the whole reason for a vote. I don't understand, we keep talking, it's been thrown out here that, and not that it was something we said, but, if we go to a $500,000 for 2 years, well, what's the difference, in all honesty? Because if we went from a $500,000 instead of 1 mil, that other $500,000 doesn't go anywhere. We don't get it. The only people that get it is the people that are out there voting. It goes back into their pocket. But if they want to pay that 1 mil, then let them pay the 1 mil. That's the whole idea of the voting of it. And I just think it's more for us to decide exactly what we want to see in the contract. I don't have a problem with this other ends of it, of whether we want to take away the penal fines or whether we want to reduce the millage or whatever. And I guess I would ask our Attorney Zappa then. I agree with John, and I agree with all of you that I think we should be represented on the board. I just don't know if it's possible. And I guess that's my question. Is it impossible for us to be on the board, or is that something that can be negotiated?
As it's written, we can't.
As the charter is set up, that is not an option. So that's going to require something a whole lot more than you're going to be able to negotiate between now and the time the ballot comes up. I mean, that might be fodder for discussion at some future point, but that's not something that you're going to be able to resolve between now and the time this needs to go on the ballot. That's something that they do not have the power under their current arrangement to deal with by just putting it into the contract between Marquette Township and the Peter White Public Library. That is not fair game for negotiation for your contract at this point. Is it fair for discussion as far as, is that something that could be improved upon? Of course. But they're two very different things.
Okay.
The city charter addresses that. Marquette. I was gonna try to find, I didn't highlight it, 6-1. No person shall hold any office of the city unless the person has been a qualified and registered elector of the city for at least 1 year immediately prior to filing for election. It's a city library, so city residents are on the board.
Oh, but,
If the city wants to change their charter.
yeah,
right,
that's the thing.
it's not something
The
that's
charter
handed
can
out.
be revised, and I think Roger will tell you that according to the state laws, just about any agreement you want to come to can be come to. But you can't add it to what's there now, that's obvious. But they've had 8 years to think about it.
So, we've thrown around a lot of ideas. If you want the three of us to take some of these issues to the meeting, and if there's something else you want us to list,
I'd like to get a consensus of our points that we want to bring up. That's basically all I want. It's no different than negotiating a contract with the union, what we're looking for, and I think it would have to be a consensus of the board of what we're looking for.
do you want to pick 2 or 3 or 5 items or something of what's been discussed and narrow it down?
Sure.
John?
I think one of the things that could be done is the 3 members of the committee could meet with the Peter White Public Library and just have a plain old discussion about things. You know what some of the points are that people have brought up here. They would in turn bring up the points that their folks have brought up, and then come back and have a discussion then. It's going to be a lot more meaningful at that point than it would be tonight. And I respectfully, I think that's the
right way to go, John.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I'll do too is go back and listen to this meeting. I've got 10 things that I've written down, and try to get the list pretty comprehensive that we can at least throw out to them what we've talked about. Because I don't know, they may all sit and want to listen to this too, and that's what I was hoping we'd have, is a discussion. That's what we're supposed to do as a board. Anyway, we're supposed to deliberate. It's right in our rules. You know, I know we've had some long meetings over the last 7.5 years, but that's what we're charged to do.
You bet.
And one of the things I wrote down was essential services, and that term essential has been questioned over the last few meetings too. And we're not questioning, or I wasn't questioning, whether it's essential to support the library. I was questioning or bringing up that the township has essential services we must provide. We are charged with finding, recognizing, and meeting the needs of the township. So I kind of disagree with Dan's concept that it's not us to tell them what they can and cannot afford, because that's, I know what you're saying, but that is kind of our job, is to help our taxpayers fund the essential services as easily and uniformly as we can. And the essential is to, pay, we have to have a building that we can conduct business in and make sure that there's water and that they do have power and they have essential services to live, whether it's, water, or we've got electricity. We have to make sure we have, lighting and roads, and we have to have essential services. Things like the Heritage Trail and the veterans and AMCAB and the library are not essential services. And I'm not saying I don't support those, but there is a distinction that needs to be made. And if we want to, and I'm playing advocate here because that's my job as the moderator, I have to bring all of these. Like Randy said one time, like it or not, I'm your budget manager. I need to bring you all of these alternatives, even if you hate them. Because he probably hated them too. But that's what we have to do. We have to talk about this stuff. We have to think outside the box. Okay, John?
I think that this board, after going through the budget that we just went through, we know that we're on the cusp of needing to have some monies to do things that we really don't have. And that's why I think that the responsibility belongs with this board, to be the first alarm about we're in trouble, folks. We're coming down on a point where we're going to need some money, and if we have some emergencies, we're going to need money for things. We have some fire department equipment that is aging. We don't have any money in the capital improvement program. We're going to have some water systems, and we're going to have some sewerage systems, and we're going to have some road systems and street lighting and things like that. Things that we need, we're not going to have a whole lot of money for anymore. And that's why we need to start thinking about this thing. It isn't just the library. It's anything that comes up that you mentioned that we're going to be questioning whether we can go. We just stopped applying for grants because we wouldn't have the matching money. Come on, folks. We got a real problem coming around the corner, and this is just one of the things we have to be looking at. And nobody's attacking the library. It isn't just the library. It's things in nature in this community that are in jeopardy. We're on the cusp of needing something. And if tomorrow there was a big tragedy here, we'd be hard pressed to find the money. And that's why I am asking that we look at this like a lot of other things and come up with some intelligent decisions about it. We're not the only community in this trouble. There's a whole lot of them are like that. But we need to take in hand what we can do to provide for the future. And I think the future needs to be attended to with the library and everything else. Thanks.
Ernie?
I'm listening to Dan and that, I agree with parts of Dan says, but I'm looking at it as fiscal responsibility of the board and that, looking towards the future. If you look through, going back to our budget sessions, and our manager was saying that he's very concerned with coming up in budget for 17. We really don't know where we're going to be. This year we had 3 alternatives, a high, low, and a middle. We took the middle, hoping that we'd get there. We don't know for sure. We're only 3 months, not even 3 months into it yet, so we don't know. We're going to be working on our 17 budget in about 5 months, somewhere in that vicinity. We may get some indication as where we're going to go for 17 by then. We don't know. It comes back to fiscal responsibility of this board. Where do we want to go in that? And true, by putting on a ballot, the people vote for it. But if we don't have the dollars, as John says, to do some of these projects, what are we going to do? We're going to have to go out and put some more millage on there for different things in that? We don't know in that. We don't have the idea at this point in time in that. So the timing is critical as to when it's going to appear on the ballot. So we know what our fiscal responsibilities and our needs are for 17 and 18 and 19 in that. We're working on CIP, and if you remember what Kurt said on the enterprise fund, sure, there's no millage there, but it is a direct cost to our residents on the enterprise fund. There's no question about that. If they do something there or something happens, they're going to have to raise rates, and that we don't know. We did decrease the solid waste, but if you read in the paper that the solid waste are going to raise all their rates. We don't know how that's going to affect us at this point in time. There's little things like this are happening continually. So we comes back to this board being fiscally responsible as how we're going to handle it going into the future. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. All I know is there's enough things on the table now that it's all unknown. We just don't know what's gonna happen in the next 6 to 8 months, and that there's gonna be some idea what 2017 is gonna bring, and that, so. We have a lot of items, and we can talk with them, and I think that's the direction to go. Sit down with them, talk with them, see what they come up with, and move forward. We still have plenty of time to come up with some ideas and that, and come back to the board and let the board relook at everything and go back to them. And I think that's the way we have to do with them and that, so.
Pete?
Just want to make one more comment, just that we are elected here to look out for the residents and to make decisions for them and the right decisions. I've sat in this meeting here many times and, we can't afford a nickel or a dime in a water or sewer or garbage collection. You know, people tell me that you're supposed to be looking out for me because I'm not there. And that's why I take it very seriously. And that's why I question a lot of things. And so, you know, it is. We can't put everything on the ballot, every decision we have to make, but they're expecting us to look out for them. So that's why I think we should question everything. And so.
Thanks. Randy and I did look at, the other day, we're at 4.905 mils right now, and 5 is our base cap for operations. So if we even raise that to 5, it's $20,000. It's not gonna have a whole lot of impact in $1 million budget. So if, like it has been said, if we have to go back out to the public to, pay the light bill, I don't, whatever example you want to
20,000,
use.
Lynn, is only two freeze-ups. If you have 2 freeze-ups at someone's house on the road, it's 10,000 every time you start, digging a hole. So that's 2 of them.
And this, we know this is a pass-through. It's not our money. That isn't the point. But if we have to, it's not fiscally responsible, as Ernie said, to continue to tax the public. That's what we have to look at, is how much can they absorb, especially with the raises that are gonna be coming up. So I think we've got enough information if anybody else wants to.
I
make
just
any-
want to add one thing, and that's that I want the people that have come to the board and spoke, I want them to know that I respect the positions that you hold. I also respect greatly the very reason that you have come and the factual way you presented your case. That's to be admired. And I really appreciate that in most of the cases that everything has been factual and it has been from the heart. I want you to know that I understand and respect that, and I say that to you, and I welcome you. But I think you have to understand our position as well, and that's all. I hope we're still friends.
So we're good. We'll move on. So we do have to conduct business here too. Discussion of 2015 managers, well, it should be 2016. Managers' goals and objectives. Then you do have, wake up here. You do have something in your packet. And Manager Gerard has mentioned before 2 things that he thought might be important to focus on in 2016. A lot of the other things that he had been working on for 15 are either finished or closing or almost closing. Did anybody have anything that they wanted to add? Comments about what he's recommending? Additions?
Do you have anything?
Ernie?
On the one of the goals, like expanding the DDA boundary, that on the M28 41 corridor, are you addressing anything about when 41 gets redid and we're gonna do any sewer or water work or anything like, is that gonna be part of that?
Well, yeah, the whole thing. We've got, as you see in the manager's report, made a reference to a subcommittee that we've created, including the DDA, the Recreation Committee, and the Roads Committee, to work with MDOT and to work with the Board of Light and Power about things like lighting and all of that in conjunction with Road Commission with MDOT projects that they're planning in 2019 and 2021. But the expansion of the boundaries itself is a separate project, and that's about a 6-month project to get that done, simply to extend the boundaries. And there's meetings that need to occur with the stakeholders and those kinds of things. But working with the other committees along with that to combine some of the pedestrian issues that we have, some of the safety issues we have, the lighting issues, trying to mitigate some of the accidents, the speed that there is in the corridor, those are all wrapped into that.
We've already had one DDA meeting, and then an offshoot of that was the meeting that he was referring to with DDA members, road committee members, MDOT, and BLP. 'Cause this will be a major 2.5 or 2.25 miles, I guess, from,
About 2.5 miles.
does it go right? Well, we debated whether it was going to go right to the Negaunee Township border, because the commercial district is in half mile or 1/4 mile, I think, to the east. So it's not necessarily the whole township, but it goes right from, Pizza Hut basically up. It's kind of
Want
a
a
crooked
motion?
border.
Do you want a motion?
Whatever, it's board pleasure.
You want to do it?
I would say also, this is just a start, because goals and objectives, as new things come up, they keep getting added, as we become more aware of things happening in that too. So this would be a starting point as we move forward in that, so.
Yeah, and basically what the board had asked me for some proposals or suggestions for what I thought might be reasonable goals and objectives for 2016. And basically, these are in addition. I'm only recommending 2 because we already have 4 that are ongoing. So those are carrying over next year and probably into 17, like the roads project. And we're starting the second phase of the roads project this spring. We've got recreation, the projects that we've already got going in recreation, Schwemmwood Parks development, the completion of the Lions Field recreation area, those things will carry over into this year. The water issue, the board has been active in trying to formulate an authority of some sort for water. Well, we're scheduling our first meeting of a regional water management group, including the county, the cities, and the townships. That meeting is being scheduled probably for the first week in March right now. And then what are we doing with the second phase of our own water project as it impacts Mason's Bluff? Those are ongoing projects. Those will be 2016 options because the current owner of Mason's Bluff has to do something in 2016. They have to move on it. So that's going to become live this year.
Move to receive the manager's goals and objectives as outlined in the letter.
Second.
Motion and support. Anything else, John?
That's it.
Pete?
Nothing?
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Good. New business. Consider resolution has been moved to the next agenda for the Royals hockey team. And the next one after that is to consider the budget amendment 2016-01, actually -01.
Very simply, the majority of this budget is your roads project. And basically what this is the money that's been expended that's being paid out to the contractors to be reimbursed from the bond funds. So this is just the mechanism to register, to record that. So we make the payment, we issue the invoice to the road commission, they reimburse us from the bond proceeds. That's what you see represented here for the most part.
Okay. Randy?
Yeah, the budget amendment authorization is requested to add to the Township Improvement Fund the debt service from the bonds. Payments for 2016 would be from the road bonds. Also requested is reallocation of expenditures in the water fund. The Northwoods pumping station has required some maintenance and troubleshooting on a control valve, which has not been originally budgeted, and that was $2,000. So I make a motion, we approve the budget amendment.
Support.
Motion and support, and this is roll call.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks?
Yes.
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Trescott?
Yes.
Trustee Pompo?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay. And the manager's report. It's up to Randy again.
That was quick.
Yeah.
You do have, before you, a printed manager's report, and the first item on the manager's report is that group that I spoke of and what its goal is and its objective. Township events, as trustee LaRue mentioned, we have on the 27th our 3-on-1, hopefully hockey tournament. He mentioned 10 to 3. We are discussing possibly having that start as early as 9, depending on how many teams show up. But right now it's scheduled 10 to 3, but it may start as early as 9 o'clock. If the weather turns, we'll be converting that to hopefully not waiter hockey, but possibly boot hockey, as we did last year, same thing. When you run into late February and March, you just don't know what the conditions are going to be. We've got high temperatures scheduled this coming weekend. It then dips back down into the upper 20s, lower 30s, but rain, so we don't know what the surface will look like at that point. Just two other items that I wanted to mention that are not represented on it because they're relatively new. As of today, we're about 99.9% complete on the warming building. The hot water, instant hot water heater has been installed. It was completed yesterday. The only thing that's remaining is the permanent bench that will go inside the warming hut. We have the aluminum picnic table in there as a temporary. The bench will be basically mounted down the center of the building. So that's not quite completed yet. That's being donated, so we're waiting for that to come. That will complete then the warming facility. It is open, however. It has been open now for quite some time. The hours are posted on our website. They're posted at the ice rink and at the warming facility. Saturday of this week, the Polar Roll is occurring. The fat bike race, the snow bike race will come through Marquette Township. They have about 200 registered right now that will be starting at the Boulder Grill on Washington Street in McClellan. It will come down South Vandenbroek, will cross Grove Street, and will go down Howell Road. We will be monitoring that. There will be no vehicles that will be going down that road. It will only be the racers. They'll go around the circuit, and then they will come back out somewhere around 3 o'clock. That should wrap that up. An aid station is being set up just outside our gate. We're controlling the access to the well field itself, and this will be probably the last year they'll be using our road for that race. We have told them in the past that they need to be off the road. If we have, I'm not expecting a snow event this year since it's going to be 40 degrees, but at any event, when we have a snow event, our folks have to keep that road open and they're plowing it, so it's a dangerous situation with people on the road. And that's really all that I had to mention, unless there's anything else board members have a question on.
What was I going to ask you? Oh, the cameras.
Yes, they are being installed. They were over there yesterday starting to do some of the installation. The cameras are due in. We made a slight modification. We were able, by going back out and tweaking the prices a little, we were able to add a fifth camera that will be inside the facility.
The warming building?
Inside the warming building.
Okay.
Yeah. As it is right now, there will be 2 on the ice rink, 1 on the north end, 1 on the south end, 1 on the kiddie park, and 1 on Lions Field and the access way that used to be Erie Street. And then there will be this last camera will be mounted similar to these cameras that we have in here, the wide angle camera mounted in the corner inside.
Bertie?
Seeing we're almost complete, do we have probably should look at a date for a ribbon cutting sometime when it's nice.
Yeah, and realistically, we have talked about that, and we've talked about possibly doing that in the spring and doing a dedication for the ice rink facility as well as kiddie park all at the same time.
Identify everyone that has been involved with it.
Similar to what we have at the pavilion at the ball field, I'm not even sure what you call it, I'll call it a plaque. It looks like a table, but basically we'll have one of those over there as well.
Yep.
Randy, about, I talked to you before about it, the snow on Warner Street, the walkway. I see there's a couple people, they're still being plowed and covered, and we can't go put our snow plower thing. Are they being told to get that off of there, or what?
We're using the loader this year to do that, and because we're already into the season. In fact, we just cleared that again today.
We
blower
haven't
went
cleaned
down.
it right in front of those people's house. There's one up before Ontario and another one on the other side of Ontario.
Yeah, we hit that with our loader.
Okay.
We'll break it down. The problem is it froze so fast. You know, it was so much. It's so wet this year that as soon as you pack it, it turns to ice, and our snowblower move it, so we've been using the loader to break that down. I understand the situation they've got on Warner Street in particular. In some places, there's just nowhere else to put the snow. You know, in fact, particularly when you get down at the far end by Meeske with the child care center down there, it's rock around them. They have nowhere to put the snow other than in the right of way or on the pathway. So we've not been very aggressive about that. We've simply taken our loader down and moved it basically, and then used our blower to clear the pathway.
Anything else for the manager?
Nope.
Okay, we're back to public comment. If anybody would like to address the board, please come forward. Feel free.
Ben Sargent, 685 Erie. I'd said last meeting, I'm an employee at the library, and I just wanted to, I have to ask Mr. Marks, you had said there are, I mean, I guess I'll just comment. I mean, if you want to answer, you can. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions, but here's the thing. You said non-city residents pay more for library functions. Now, I've been an employee of the library for almost 10 years, and I can't think of one library function that non-city residents pay more for. There's the non-resident cards. If you don't live in the service area, you pay, and that's, you guys have mentioned, but library functions, non-city residents paying more? There isn't. I think what he's talking about is the Marquette Arts and Culture Center. It's in the basement. It's a separate department of the city. They lease the space from the library. They have classes, they have whatever, and I do know some of the classes, like it might be $20 for, you know, a city resident, $25 if you don't live in the city. That's not the library. The library does not run the Arts and Culture Center. In fact, sometimes people call me, you know, I work at the civic desk, I answer the phone. I want to talk to so-and-so in the Arts Center. We can't even connect them. They have to hang up and dial a different number. And I feel like it's misleading if he's saying non-city residents are paying more for the library functions. I think he's talking about Arts and Culture Center affairs, which have nothing to do with the library. I mean, we don't even get a schedule from them. So like, I don't even know. Sometimes people ask us like what the events are. We got to go on like their website and tell the people on the phone, but it's misleading to tell people that non-city residents are paying more for library functions. That's simply not true. I can attest to that just being a library employee. Okay? That's it. I just wanted to say that. I felt like I had to challenge that because it's misleading.
That's what this time is for, Ben. Thanks.
Can I respond?
Anybody else wish to address the board? Okay. Now under additional comments from board members. you
Okay.
can,
Well, what he heard was that additional functions that occur at the library do, in fact, not library functions, but down in the Arts and Council. It's in the paper all the time. And it's a portion of the library, and it's advertised that way. And that's, you're absolutely right, that it is the arts and culture that advertises in the paper. In fact, they list a complete schedule of events that they're going to have and what non-residents will pay. It just seems to me that that's another piece of the library administration that could ultimately change because it looks bad. It looks bad to people who read that in the paper.
Okay. Anything else, John?
That's it.
Dan, anything?
Well, with the upcoming closed session, I guess I'll make the comment that due to possible or perceived conflict of interest, I would like to be excused from all discussions, deliberations, and decisions concerning the Sims versus Charter Township of Marquette litigation.
So moved.
Support.
Motion and support, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
And one abstention. Dan can't
Yeah.
vote.
That's right. Bernie, anything else?
No.
Pete, anything? Diana? Randy?
Let me see if I get that date here, that, Saturday, March 5th, noon to 2, clerk's hours will be in Marquette at the office here for anyone that would like to get an absentee ballot or return one. And the election is March 8th. I hope everyone comes out and votes. That's all I have.
I don't have anything else either, so I need a motion. Sure.
You see in the paper where the city has their managers, you know, go to the library and needs talk to. I talked to Randy and other people. Our managers is open to say appointments to anyone anytime. We want to make sure that people understand that it's not the city that has this period. Our managers is available anytime for calling appointments.
Good, thank you for that. I need a motion to. Did you want to say something else first? Okay.
The motion will be to enter into closed session pursuant to MCL 15.268E to consult with an attorney regarding trial settlement strategy in connection with specific pending litigation, but only if an open meeting would have a detrimental financial effect on litigating or settlement position of a public body in the litigation of Sims versus Charter Township of Marquette. And John Marks, I believe, made the motion. And who seconded that? Okay, so trustee Marks? Trustee Truscott? Well, yes or no? Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
And Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Duran.
Yes.
You're in closed session at 8:52 PM.
Thanks for coming, everybody.